Welcome everybody. This is the Microsoft 365 Platform Community Call. It is 27th of December, and this is one of those special calls, which we did last week as well, where we do not have actual live demos in this call. But we didn't want to cancel because we want to be here for the community because, hey, we're part of the community as well. And if somebody is working, somebody is interested in joining, we want to be here for answering any questions or ad hoc discussions and so on. So that's basically the idea of still executing this call, even though it is a holiday break in most of the, what's the right way of saying that? In not necessarily most of the world, but some of the world. So that's probably the right way of saying that. Not everybody has a holiday season right now within the world.
Somewhere on Earth, someone has the day off, and so yeah.
Exactly. My name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a principal product manager. I'm really trying a hard time understanding what's my title. And I work in the Microsoft 365 platform areas, basically hopefully helping you to succeed on building stuff and being successful within Microsoft 365. With me as a co-host today, we can do this kind of a random way, David, is David Warner. David, who are you?
Hello, everybody. David Warner, Community Program Manager of Power Platform, and Vesa and I work a lot together, as you can imagine, across M365 and Power Platform.
Yeah, thank you. And like I said, we are on this special call series. So on last Tuesday, this Tuesday, so today, and a week from now on Tuesday, we will not have demos in this Tuesday call because we can see most of the Microsoft employees being out, which is good. So they're charging their batteries because, well, it's been a long autumn, and that means that we'll have great demos coming up starting from 10th of January. We already have 2 demos scheduled there, which are looking really, really good. But we'll recap some of the slides. We'll recap some of the assets which are available for you to take advantage. We'll talk about things, and then we'll move to that random chit-chat mode. So you can basically ask questions on anything on life or computers, hopefully Microsoft 365 mostly, on the chat, either using the HTTP AKMS M365 call questions link, which David actually shared on the chat, or alternatively, just add a comment in the chat. So that's one way of actually adding a question for us to then tackle. Depending on a question, we might talk about it. We might do ad hoc demos. We might share some assets from internet, and again, trying to help you, providing you some additional value. But no demos today. So if you were here for the demos, it's okay. And yes, we can celebrate my birthday today. So having a birthday like 3 days after the Christmas Eve or Christmas is not an optimal day. So it's been a pretty sad 40 and somewhat years not celebrating because everybody is out. No, that sounded really bad. Anyway. Thank you for the birthday wishes from in the chat. Now, for the assets, I think it's 47. Thank you, Radar. Thank you. How would Radar actually know? Anyway, so, well, we did work with Radar in a really awesome project back in 2012 for a long time. So I guess he remembers. So that's okay. Anyway, so we do have 2 different YouTube channels working on combining them to one channel. So what will happen? Some of the logistics are still to be decided, is that we will be shutting down the Microsoft 365 developer channel, or we will not add any additional videos there. And then we'll add a note there, which is redirecting people to the Microsoft 365 community YouTube channel as the primary channel of things. The reason why we're doing this is that we're trying to provide additional clarity on which channel to subscribe and where to go to find the latest and greatest around Microsoft 365 community videos, Microsoft videos, and having everything in one centralized location. A bit of a sad thing, of course, how did we ended up having 2 videos channels, but now we're merging them. And you might see some of the videos which are in the developer channel getting republished on another channel. We're also looking into potentially renaming the channel, but we still need to align on that with marketing. Now, excellent point from Jim on the chat. We also have a lot of open source assets available in a GitHub across multiple organizations. So we do have the Office Dev, SharePoint, Microsoft Graph GitHub organizations, which are so-called official organizations owned by, coordinated by Microsoft, and then we have the PnP organization, which is more community owned, and this is kind of an intentional thing. So it's super clear which samples are supported or to which samples Microsoft provides supports versus to which samples there's a support through community channels. Technically, all of this is under the same coordination umbrella of Microsoft and community. As it might be, however, difficult to find the relevant sample for you, rather than going to individual GitHub repos, trying to find the sample, we have created the sample galleries for you. And the primarily URL on that one is again samples. Now, if you're wondering that there's too many URLs to remember, luckily it's only one, which is taken as m365/community, from where you can actually find all of the relevant information, which you can see in here. Now, as I'm explaining this, and as we do not have demos today, I will actually show you something what we are doing in here as well. So something related on, as we discussed together with David, we are aligning the terminology to be a joint project with the community efforts with Microsoft 365 and Power Platform, because from our perspective, we are part of the same Microsoft Cloud, and there's no point of kind of isolating things. The name is actually quite long, so we do kind of apologize that, but it's for making sure that everybody inside of Microsoft feels that we're working on a same aligned objective, which is Microsoft 365 and Power Platform. So it doesn't matter which site you are focusing by yourself, you will benefit out of this calls and assets which are available from this one centralized location. And from here, you can then find, for example, all of the different calls and invites and all of those which are available. And again, just to recap, because we do get that question, all of these calls are available for everybody. These are public. Not non-NDA calls. Anybody can join on the call. Anybody can come to the chat and ask questions, and we're trying to help you any way we can. So really trying to make sure that everybody has the access towards Microsoft and also the presentations and demos and all of that. And of course, all of the community calls and the demos are being recorded, and then they're being published in the YouTube channel. So you can find the links to the individual playlists for specific calls directly from this location as well. So as an example, Power Platform community calls grouped nicely under one single umbrella. And of course, in the YouTube channel, if you go quickly, spend time in here a bit, if you go to our home, let me get that sound away from my ears. You can't hear it, but I could. You can actually see that we have a lot of playlists which we're using for grouping the relevant videos per specific topic. So you can then easily find what's interesting for you. As if you're looking into starting or focusing on Office add-ins, you can find all of the Office add-in specific demos by the community in a one centralized location. So we're really trying to make it easy for you to find what's relevant for you. Cool. That's kind of a quick intro on that one. Let me jump back on the slides because we're doing this in a special way this time again. Now, related on community calls, here's the quick links for downloading the recurrent invites. They are recurrent without an end date by default, and we basically want to do that way so that all the time within your calendar, you'll have the invite available. Now, during summertime, some of these calls summertime in the Northern Hemisphere, let me be super clear, some of these calls might actually be canceled or skipped, but we try to communicate that in social media way advanced, so you'll know advance if something is getting removed. You might see that Adaptive Card Call has been removed from here. Adaptive Card Call is getting merged to the Tuesday weekly call and as part of the Microsoft 365 platform call in Tuesdays. That's basically the idea there. And then that means that on every single Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time and every single Thursday at 7 a.m. Pacific time, we will have a call. Those are the kind of the weekly series. In Thursday, it's either Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community call or the Viva Connection SharePoint Framework call, which are mainly community demos. Also, we have the Office Add-ins, Power Platform, Microsoft Identity Platform community monthly calls, which are happening on a monthly basis. For many of these calls, we are actually also asking for community demos. So we'll do a bit more promotion on that one starting the new year because we want to have you to present in these calls. So it's not just the Tuesday call is intended for Microsoft to demo what's the latest and greatest, but especially the Thursday calls and the Power Platform call, for example, the monthly one, is open for community demos, because the easiest way we learn is by seeing what somebody else have built and what they learned as part of building that. So rather than just Microsoft telling how everything is awesome, it's actually good to have the community of telling that, well, they said that it's awesome, but there's some certain hiccups here and there, and this is how my learning. So we can actually be much more transparent and open, hopefully, on the messaging. Thank you, Gautam, as well on the birthday wishes. Now, related on other assets, we have the Microsoft 365 developer program. You probably, if you have been using that within the last 6 months, you've seen that it was there, it was out there, it was put on back on, and it has been a bit shaky or flaky recently. It is reliable as long as you use a one tenant and a one phone number. So it's basically, there has been some changes related on that program. So you cannot sign up for a unlimited amount of tenants, because people did that using a same phone number. So we needed to be a bit more restrictive related on the developer program. Now, by default, you have a one phone number, you have a one developer tenant, it's targeted for you, and it will automatically renew in 90 days as long as you use it for developer usage. On the learning side, on the Microsoft Learning side, there's a lot of awesome Microsoft 365 learning assets available, and we are actually building new stuff here as well. So I'm just currently reviewing, well, not now because I'm in this call, but almost now reviewing the Viva Connection ACE, updated Viva Connection ACE module, which is really focusing on building ACEs with SharePoint framework for Microsoft Viva Home and Viva Connection. So that's coming up in early January or in mid-January, and we'll do specific demos on those tutorials actually in this Tuesday call as well, starting from 10th of January, which is really, really cool. On the other assets which are available, we have the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast, hosted by Jeremy Thake, Paul Scheffelein, or Aisha Bash. Aisha is a cloud advocate. They seem to be cycling a bit on who's talking there, so that there's 3 of them now who are hosting. And then we have the Microsoft 365 PnP Weekly, hosted by me and Waldeck Mastercards. Both of these are currently in a holiday break, and they're coming back in early January, so that should be beneficial from there. Now, we also talked about already the sample galleries. Just again, recap on this one. I should actually update the screenshot a bit because that's no longer valid. The status, what's available, and this is really cool. So rather than you going to the GitHub trying to find the relevant sample for you, you can actually come in here and you'll see all of the cool samples contributed by Microsoft or by the community. So you can then filter down based on a keyword or author name. You can even see a specific sample contributed by individual people. So, for example, Louis Fries has contributed these 6. I know that many more are coming pretty soon. And then if you find the relevant sample for you, you can actually then go and open that one in GitHub. So that's really making it sure that you can more efficiently find the sample location from GitHub, because the sample might be in many repos. This one, by the way, is a really cool stuff. We're rolling out the Microsoft Graph SharePoint Pages API currently. It is not quite 100% worldwide yet because there's a unfortunate, there was a person who got sick who was responsible of rolling out things, but it should be relatively almost 100%, so you can actually start using that already. And that's the new Pages Graph API, which is coming out soon. So really cool sample if you are interested on that. The sample gallery works in a way that we aggregate all of the samples from the GitHub using a tool written by community members, and then we basically surface that from a one centralized UX in this adaption.microsoft.com. And then you can filter down on attributes and settings and all of that, which is really cool. So there's and it's actually quite fast nowadays. It wasn't this fast in the past, but now it's really cool stuff. So good. So please do take advantage of this one rather than starting from scratch. Have a look on if there's an existing sample available and then reuse that, reuse those learning. All of the samples which we as a Microsoft provide or which are provided from the community locations are with MIT license. And that means that you can actually reuse the code any way you want. Which is really, really cool. So you can even get inspiration and some code snippets and maybe package that as a product from your offerings and then publish that to the store. Who knows? There's a lot of opportunities available in here. Good. Let me go back on slides because we do have this a bit more ad hoc at random discussion today. David is going to talk a bit about sharing is caring. As he's doing that, let me go to the AKMS sharing is caring URL. But David, what is sharing is caring?
What is it's just all of us sitting around sharing information. Just
Why is that? Well, because sharing is caring.
That's right. So all that goodness, all those amazing samples that Vesa was showing come from the community, right? And we in Microsoft also contribute. But by and large, those numbers are amazing because of all of you. Sanford had mentioned sounds inspiring, right? Being able to contribute those samples and maybe even promote them up to be a full product. Sharing is Caring is here to provide you a little more guidance if you're not familiar with the landscape of GitHub. So you've got, terms like fork and blame and raw, and all those can be confusing and intimidating and scary. But you don't have to just go read a blog or watch a video to learn how to do it and then be left with other questions. These sessions are hands-on, which means that we're going to get together in a call with other like-minded, passionate individuals within the community, such as yourself, and we're going to walk through doing exactly what you see the different topics are. So, for example, first-time contributor or Power Platform Samples contributor is going to walk you through making an actual GitHub pull request. So if you've never done it before, if you've never made a pull request and you don't go, I don't even know what a pull request is, we're going to talk through that. We're going to show you, we're going to walk you through it. The beauty is that we're doing it live, together, hands-on. So if you have struggles or challenges and you want to ask a question, you're absolutely going to be able to do that, as well as it's a safe space. So you don't have to worry about, oh, is this recorded? Should this question I want to ask already be known? Am I going to look foolish? Not at all. Everyone has to start somewhere, and it's not recorded, so you feel comfortable and empowered to be able to ask questions in an open space with your peers and the community members. So all completely free, not recorded, hands-on. Goodness, it's going to show you how to do a number of these things that you might be interested in, and we're going to do it together as a community. So don't hesitate to sign up. We've got a number of sessions coming up here shortly in January, and we'd love to have everybody get involved. And you can always attend more than once. You don't have to come just once and say, oh, I attended, I guess that's it. I still don't understand. We are here for you perpetually. We are a global community.
And I have to say that even after all of these years, at least personally, every now and then you're like, wait, how does this Git thing work again? Why am I having now conflicts? How? Please help me. So all of these are really, really cool. So making it available and more adaptable and more exposed for everybody in the community. So using Git is surprisingly actually hard. Well, it's not hard if you know the basics, but then anything advanced is like, well, what am I doing here? So
and GitHub changes their interface a lot lately, which is great, but then leaves you with, wait a second, where'd my cheese go? So we'll figure some of that stuff out together if you're interested. And again, it's all free of charge. Don't hesitate to sign up.
Carol actually has a good question there.
Yep. Carol, so we're working through some automation. You'll be getting one in the next few days. You should actually repeat the
question if people can.
Yes, very good. The question is, I signed up, registered, haven't heard anything back, assuming that it's just not time. That's correct. Yes, that's correct. So we're sending those out manually. We're waiting for folks to join it. We know it's busy during the holidays and folks are kind of busy with family and personal time. So we're sending those out within the next few days to everyone. And then adding some more automation. We were just working on that last week, actually, and over the weekend, a little bit trying to use some bookings if we can to be able to do that. So keep on a lookout for an invite, but don't hesitate to reach out. If you signed up and didn't get an invite, don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Hugo Bernier or any of the other members of the team, April, Emily, Derek, Louisa. Always happy to help. But yeah, absolutely great question.
Yeah, and I love Jim's comment related, and they call me 007, 0 changes, 0 commits, 7 build conflicts. Yes, that can actually happen in GitHub. It's a bit of things. Now, as we are on this holiday season in this side of the world, at least, and there was not that many news, and we're expecting not to have any news during this week because it's between the Christmas and the New Year. But last week there was 2 new blog posts around the things which we are tracking. So there was an announcement of Microsoft Graph PowerShell v2, which is now in public preview. It's half the size and will speed up your automation, so it's much more faster to use that, and more importantly, it's much smaller than it was previously. So great improvements in there. So that's now in preview. We have scheduled a live demo on getting started the preview on 10th of January. So that on 2 weeks from now. The Microsoft Graph team will be in the call to do a live demo on that, which is really cool. The second thing, what's notes from ESBC keynotes. ESBC is the European SharePoint Office 365 Azure Conference 22 in December. That was really nice to see actually people in person in Denmark, in Copenhagen, and we had 4 different keynotes there. So Jeff Deeper, Caruana, Scott, and I did a keynote on the developer extensibility as well, and I was joined by Emily Mancini, Luisa Fries, Derek Cash-Peterson, and Laura Kokarinen for the keynote. So really cool setup as well. I know that the recordings of those keynotes will be released by ESBC organization sooner or later. That should be good as well. Now, as we started the discussion today, we are having this call in the same format as a week ago, which is we do not have demos. So this is now more a Q&A, random discussions, random ad hoc demos. As you've seen, we didn't rush on the intro slides either. We were providing a bit more additional context on things. But if you want, you can either use the chat in the Teams for adding any questions or suggestions or feedback, and we can react on them, we can talk about them, or you can use the AKMS M365 call questions, which I need to actually probably get visible in one of my screens. So there we go. I can see actually a few of them. That's good. So let me move that in there so I can see things. David, you're probably helping on the moving on things. I can see now 2 questions available. Now, there's a question from Anonymous, which is for good, so you don't have to actually put the name if you don't want to. Love the samples. How do we know that they are safe to be used in our organization? And a really good question. So that's coming back on the samples which are available in here. So are these actually safe to be used? Are they not safe to be used? Now, by default, I would always be a bit careful on anything which is available on the internet, especially for download, and you can start using that. So the most important thing is to understand what does the sample actually do, how does it actually work. So these are provided as samples, and that's really key to understand as well. They're not provided as ready-to-use in production solutions. So the intention here is that we'll provide samples which hopefully somebody from your organization or from your partner organization can pull down, modify, adjust, package, and deploy. And as part of that model of packaging and deployment to your organization, you'll do the validation of the solution, and there's a guarantees or quality checks by the person who's submitting things. So we, of course, double check the samples. We try to avoid any surprises in them, but they are provided as samples, not as ready-to-use solutions as such. So there has to be some level of a responsibility of taking them into use in the production as well. Did I answer the question, David? Any thoughts on your side? Samples.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so they are samples. You're not going to necessarily find them to be always the most academically correct. Some of them, that's very subjective at times, right? Yes. There's sometimes like tomato a little bit. Some have different perspectives. We'll say, as Vesa mentioned, we do process everything. So everything you're looking at has come through officially controlled Microsoft tenants, repositories within GitHub. So it's not like it's referring off to some random person's, GitHub account, so to speak, that could be doing Bitcoin mining in the middle of the night and you're not even knowing about it. We do process everything, but as Vesa mentioned, things are changing all the time, and things are getting updated all the time. And so we get alerts from GitHub on things that need to get updated and changed, and we do our best to do that. So you always want to proceed with some degree of caution, as anything on the internet could be realized and perceived that way. But we do go through a number of efforts. Paolo and Hugo and a number of other people are very involved in all of the samples. Derek trying to ensure that they're meeting the needs from a safety perspective. Whether or not they're, this is production worthy or not, then no, don't approach it with the expectation of that, but approach it with, hey, I'm sharing something. And in terms of you contributing, you shouldn't feel like you need to provide something that is academically perfect, or why would someone want this because I already know how to do it, and if I know how to do it, then everybody knows how to do it. Don't ever think that way. It is always great to provide even small samples that show a very scoped feature or sample, because it absolutely will help others. And if it helps one person, you've done a great thing.
And that's actually a good discussion point as well. So these are intentionally not super polished. Well, some of them are. So stuff like Shawn Mendes has like the most beautiful come on, I'm trying to find most beautiful looking applications. So these are super polished, and they look so good. Some of them are not as polished. That is by design. So we want to actually have both options. So they don't have to be a super showcase and, oh my God, mind-blowingly good, because the simple piece of code, 2 lines of code, might be the thing what you're looking for. So finding a sample which is doing something similar what you're looking for, I say, oh, now I got the idea from here, now I'm inspired, and now I can do additional things. Now, Shawn Mendes samples, just absolutely brilliant stuff. I have to paste in the example code in here. He's building so beautiful stuff throughout the Viva and the Teams and SharePoint. So if you haven't want to have a look on those. Now, are the samples able to be loaded into a development environment? Intriguing about table dependencies, etc. Now, this is actually most of the samples are designed so that they can be used as such in a developer environment or in the dev environments. If there are requirements, for example, something like a list to be defined, typically what you find is that within a sample itself, we are explicitly calling out, hey, this is the kind of a list what is required for you to do so that you're able to use the sample. And that's by default something what we're asking the contributors to do. So if there are any technical dependencies, they would actually explain, this is how do you make the sample work. Of course, there are certain exceptions on that. You might find a sample where, well, it didn't tell me what I need to do to make it run. Those are more as an exception. Depending on a sample, if it comes from for example, from a Microsoft messaging extension link unfurling, you can quickly have a look on here, and going in here. If I remember correctly, this one is a good example of a sample where we have explicit deployment guidance and steps and step-by-step things on what do I need to do to actually make it work in the Azure or in your environment. So a lot of depending again on sample, there might be a separate even deployment guidance available, but depends on the sample. Now, yeah, questions.
Yeah, I will add on to that too. A lot of them are samples and meant for very specific learning techniques or something, but you do find some that are very production worthy. And I think one of those is probably like the content query, React content query web part.
Yes.
I'll put that in the link there for you, or yeah, I can just search on that. And that's one that's fantastic. I mean, it's been so cultivated by the community in terms of updates and feature enhancements. If we all remember the content query from Classic, it was great or horrible, depending on how you like XSL, but it was very empowering, right? You could do a lot with it. And now in the React content query web part, created by and curated by the community. It's
if I can find it
up for you. I did put in the link in the chat for you if you want to.
That's too easy. I don't want to.
Now you're on a quest, right?
Yes. I need to find it.
It uses there we go. Handlebar templates. It even has MGT created or excuse me, added into it. So inside your handlebar templates, which don't be intimidated if you're not familiar with handlebar templates, it's really just an HTML CSS, JavaScript kind of thing where you can use pure HTML within your content query instead of XSL, which you used in Classic. You can just put MGT components directly into that. And as long as you've got all the approvals and everything done for that, you are able to then just inject. And technically, at that point, you don't have to write a single line of SPFX to make all that happen. So you're able to pull data from your lists and libraries. You're able to pull data from MGT based on maybe those lists and libraries, and don't even have to write a single line of SPFX if you're not comfortable and don't want to. So definitely take a look at that. That's a good example of one that is probably production worthy, and a lot of people are using it.
True. It is super widely used. Or the search web parts for PnP search web parts is a good example of a. Officially, it is still a sample, but it's basically still a community provided solution which can be used within the production as such. So really cool. Good. Oh, there's a good question from Parent. There seems to be overlap between the platforms. For instance, Power Apps Community Blog and M365 PnP Community Blog. Same can be said for samples EMP. What are your thoughts and plans on this? That's a really good question because we do have so many different locations. So this comes back on the different, let's say, how would I put it? There are different organizations and different teams in Microsoft, and we in Microsoft are surprisingly not super aligned always in our objectives. So I'm providing a bit more transparency than typically on these things in this call. But there are conflicting interests and conflicting objectives in many cases in Microsoft. You've probably seen this as an external person, so it doesn't come as a massive surprise. And that is simply because there's a different organizational structures, and all of them are trying to basically provide the best possible solutions and systems which are available. Now, that then might, in certain cases, cause conflicting and overlapping locations. So as an example, we do have the Power Apps Community Forum. Let me go in here. So there's a Power Apps Community in here, and then this one is kind of the primary Power Apps Community forum for questions and locations and all of that stuff. Now, some of our content related on Power Apps, as an example, also comes through the community and the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community blog posts, where we are sharing, for example, the community call recordings. And that's simply partly because of historical reasons, partly because of ongoing alignment, partly because of conflicting interests, but we're trying to make sure that the key point is to give you the information which is available. That wasn't a super clear answer. At least I was just trying to explain why we have conflicting forums, right?
Yeah, I mean, Microsoft is a big organization, and there's it takes time to move that ship, right? And so with Hugo and I and Heather Newman on the Power Platform side and Vesa on the Microsoft side, we've got a lot of alignment opportunities that we're working towards right now, a lot of conversations, but that's a slow moving ship. I think the question was specifically around the samples, right? Same can be said for samples, et cetera. What are your thoughts, plans on this? The good thing about the samples, though, is those are centralized right now. So they are all under the PnP GitHub account. And while it takes a little bit of time for it to get bubbled up into the adoption.microsoft.com because of certain tasks that we have to go through to do that we're still perfecting, they are actually all already under one umbrella, which is really nice. So you'll see more alignment there. You're going to see more, just as Vesa mentioned at the beginning of the call, more Power Platform and Microsoft 365 together, not one or the other. You're going to start seeing AKA links, something as simple as AKA links, referencing the entire community as opposed to just M365 or Power Platform. And we're trying to kind of push that out in all areas.
And that's really comes back on the better together story as well. So it's not a competition, it's not a either or, it's actually combining the Microsoft Cloud elements, so from the best sides. So there are no Power Pages samples right now available, and that is a good point. But there is already a location for them, and there's going to be a sharing is caring initiatives for the Power Platform, which are looking into getting those moving as well. So it's part of the getting people actually available to contribute those samples as well. And that's good. Now, there's a good question from in the chat as well now on the Q&A, whatever application. So are there plans for more patches in 2023? And can we actually share this from the Credly? So
sure.
If we go in here and we click that one, and we can actually see, here we go.
Sneak preview.
So sneak preview, indeed. Ta-da! So we have, of course, the community contributor patches, which are updated for 2023. And then as part of the upcoming batches, I guess we actually have some new coming 2023. No, it's actually not all of them are visible yet. So we will have more and more patches available in here for depending on what things you're contributing. So if it's an A sample, Power Platform sample, is it a script sample, you'll have a specific patches available for them. Our batch king is David, who's actually designing most of these patches. So he has what do you have, 20 more news patches in queue, something like that?
Yeah, we've got a bunch coming up here, and some surprises for 2022 as well. So we're working on some new designs, so it's not always just kind of stale updating the year. We want there to be consistency, of course, so that it aligns with the other recognition that you're getting within Credly. These do sit right alongside the Credly badges that you get when you're certified by Microsoft for those certifications, which is great. It's an official and accredited way to show the difference that you're making. And we know that makes a big difference, right? Because I come from a consulting background, Vesa comes from a consulting background, and oftentimes even if you're not in a consulting background, you're going to report to a manager who wants to know, hey, what are you doing that sets you apart from others? And if you're a consultant, then you have to answer to a manager as well as a client, and oftentimes both. So it's a great way to show that you're making a difference. We do have some PnP PowerShell is getting ready to launch here. Keep an eye on the Twitter sphere and LinkedIn in the next probably day or two. You're going to see some updates there. And we finally were able to get Chris Kent in a stable. See what I did there? And got him all trained. And we've got some list formatting badges and CLI for Microsoft 365 coming up. And there will be a nice little Easter egg in the list formatting referring to horses. So it won't be that hard to find.
And you don't need to wait until Easter to get that Easter egg. Right?
Yes, exactly. It's gonna come. It's gonna come out right away. It's gonna come out right away.
It's a holiday Easter egg.
Yeah, but there is a 2022 badge even. We're going to make it retroactive and find everyone that contributed to list formatting. Same for PowerShell, same for CLI, and there'll be 2023. So lots of new opportunities, and we've got a lot of things like the Season of Getting, where we set that up as a special badge for a specified amount of time. We're going to do more of that in 2023 because we know everyone enjoys that. There's a serious side of it, of course, saying, hey, I am a contributor to this particular initiative, list formatting, or Power Platform samples, or ACEs. We've got one coming up for ACEs if you are excited about adaptive card extensions. Yep. But there's also some fun opportunities to say, hey, I got involved here and made a difference, and it still shows that you're getting more involved and that you're taking and making time to be involved, which again sets you apart from others and is our opportunity to say thank you in an official, formal way.
Yep, absolutely. Now, on the AMA application, you should probably paste in the URL, David, one more time in the chat. If people are, of course, you can ask the questions directly in the chat as well. I'll come back on David Ramilar's comment in a second. There's a question from Anonymous around syntax models. Are we not supposed to be using existing content types publishing from hub? Those content types come as a read-only since they are published, and syntax gives errors about it being unable to change the content type when it's trying to push the model. To be fair, I'm not a super specialist on Microsoft syntax, as it was renamed from SharePoint syntax to Microsoft syntax, but I'm watching the question. I would not be surprised if the Microsoft syntax would not want to use the content types from the content type hub because they are afraid of replication dependencies. So if you then adjust the content type again in a hub, what will happen if it overrides the syntax modified content types in the Microsoft syntax? And now, not a specialist. I'm not surprised if you're seeing that based on my previous knowledge of SharePoint, which is a few years. But it's a bit of a bummer that if they don't allow you to do that. But I can confirm that the right level of thinking. But if they're read-only, that seems to imply that it is not intended to be used in Microsoft syntax. Sorry for that. Can't answer in a 100% reliable way. Now, there's one more in the AMA question, which is, would the following be a supported scenario? An application customizer which injects a link element to a custom CSS file living inside assets library. So let's actually talk about this one a bit. Let me come in here. Oh, that's an ugly looking page. Let me go in here. Let me go here. What on earth have I been using on a SharePoint store? An old store even. Now, if you go in here, this is a typical SharePoint online site, a relatively boring one. The question is around, hey, I want to do something which is modifying this UX, for example, by hiding the left navigation, the app bar, or injecting some panels or modifying the navigation, something dramatical using CSS to make things happen. And is it supported to use an application customizer, which is then modifying that using a CSS file? Technically, the answer is no, it is not supported, because we do not want you to consider the UX and the CSS and HTML and CSS, the styling elements, as an API of SharePoint. So we cannot guarantee, for example, that the element IDs, so let me do this. If we go in here, and if we go in here, and we can actually see that, for example, if you would want to hide the whole site header, you might be able to go something like point to a class main header and modify the style to be hidden, and poof, the whole site header would be going away. The challenge of doing that is that we cannot guarantee that the site header would not be renamed in a week or two. So we don't consider the HTML structure, which we are outputting from SharePoint Online, as an API. So it's not static. It might be adjusted significantly within a week or two, and that would actually break your CSS definition. Now, at the same time, this is a bit of a problematic thing as well. You might have a customer, you might have a manager, you might have a business customer or a director who says, we need to make something crazy happen on the site. There's no way for us to block that. So if you would have a impossible requirement, like adjustment of super wild adjustments in the UX, and somebody says, no, we need to do this, you can absolutely do that with an application customizer and then CSS modifications. Is that a thing what we recommend you to do? No, we don't. We certainly do not recommend you to do that, because that might actually cause you problems, because again, we might change the HTML structure in the future, and that is really the key concern here. So what that really is, like, what is supported and what's not supported discussion. So again, it's a bit of a bummer and we're trying to provide, for example, so give me one more thing in here. So for all of the UX modification and definitions, we're trying to provide more and more options and clarification and adjustments using the out-of-the-box Rails experiences. So as an example, the change to look is all the time modifying and getting more and more flexible, more and more flexibility around these things. If you use these settings, 100% supported. If you use CSS hacking, we cannot guarantee that your CSS hacking will be working within a year.
Now, there are scenarios where I think that you can be a hero, not a villain, right, with this power. Because, I mean, as Vesa mentioned, there's not anything that Microsoft can do to stop you from injecting Correct. CSS at a global level or even a page level. I submitted or put a link into the chat for the enhanced list formatting web part. There's the ability to be a hero instead of a villain in this scenario, because you do have the power, you do have the ability to do that. And there are scenarios in which you do own the HTML, right, inside of a custom web part, inside of a list formatting definition where you can define class names. You might want to do something like have a hover effect on your list formatting, or an animation that occurs upon clicking. All of that you can do, but again, for example, using the technique that was identified with the application customizer, or using even the web part that he's bringing up right now, this allows you to inject CSS only on a single page, right? So it's a web part you put on a page. You can add CSS using pseudo attributes for things like hover and click, etc. And then that allows you to inject CSS just to that page instead of using an application customizer, which is going to be published everywhere. Again, great power comes great responsibility, right? You don't want to be a villain. You want to be a hero if you're going to use this. You have the capabilities of doing that, but don't use it don't use it in a bad way.
Evil.
Or
don't use it for evil.
Exactly. Don't use it for evil, or it'll just result. I worked for an organization before I came to Microsoft who said, I'm okay, it's worth the risk. And he had us override a whole bunch of stuff. We had him sign a document saying such, and just to make sure. And he said, okay, it's worth the risk. One day, something changed in Microsoft, and the CEO was trying to do a demo, and everything was broken, and he nearly lost his job. And so that was something that is an often told story. At the most inopportune time, things break, and it's a risk-reward scenario. So use it in the areas that you completely control. Don't use it in the areas that you don't control, and you'll get the fairy tale ending. Use it otherwise, a Thanos snap might go bad.
Yes. Now, Jim hasn't actually, so coming back on a SharePoint. So those who are not SharePoint people, they're like, why do we have all of this extensibility options and everything else in SharePoint? Well, that's because SharePoint used to be fully flexible. You could do anything. So that storytelling was basically you own. You can do anything. The problem with that, which was a custom master page, is that as you start using that, then you will actually have to also update that to get any new features available. And as we are in cloud, in SharePoint Online or in Microsoft 365, we're releasing new features every single week, well, except for the holiday season. But you'll see new stuff lighting up on the UX and scenarios and all of that. And that does not work well if you have full flexibility on doing whatever you want in the UX. And that's why we were forced to start providing railed experiences, so only limited set of extensibility options which are available. Now, in Microsoft Teams, this is not a problem, because in Microsoft Teams, everybody's used to the fact that there are just certain set of elements what we can modify. In SharePoint, this is a historical problem because we used to have more flexibility, and it's more strict now in SharePoint Online intentionally, so customers don't break themselves. Or the story with David and the CEO getting a bit angry on something not working is happening. So that's kind of the storytelling behind of the scenes. Using the placeholders is 100% supported, so you can actually inject things in footer and header. We're looking into potentially doing additional things as well, and the input is super important on these things. Now, I want to go back in time for David Remillard's question related on Bob Sherman once did a talk about monetizing solutions that you built. Any interest in providing more info, best practices, tips for selling and renting a solution we built? Now, this is more on Teams monetization. And that's actually this location in here. So I'm going to paste in this in the chat. So the app camp is really targeted for storytelling and explaining the best practices and how you can build monetized solutions for Microsoft 365 and Microsoft Teams. Now, as Microsoft Teams applications can be now hosted also, well, soon in production, they can be also hosted in Outlook and in Office. That means that it's not just Microsoft Teams apps, it's actually Microsoft 365 apps, or whatever we call them, all up. By the way, Microsoft Teams apps actually work in the SharePoint as well. So you can actually use the one application which works in all of the different shapes or all of the different applications, which is really, really cool. Now, in this location, you can actually then find different options and different storytellings on the labs and how to get started, what is the best practices, how do you get the tenants, but there's actually even more. I think we have a monetization and storytelling, a lot of videos directly in YouTube, which are then showing and talking through how do you design your applications, what are the bits and pieces, what ISVs actually provide. And this is, I think it's up to 5 to 10 hours of content. So there's a lot of videos available from this one centralized location. Now, do we have more detailed like best practices on it? Unfortunately, no. So that's something which we don't have at this moment. This is really the primary location to find anything on the monetization of Microsoft Teams apps. But really, really awesome asset, and a lot of videos, a lot of written material, and hands-on labs even available. Cool. Any other thoughts? Yeah, I understand Sean Brown's comment related on I miss SharePoint. It's actually not Microsoft making business choices for everyone. Those business choices are made based on customer requirements and customer requests and customer feedback. So it's not a we want to dictate things. It's more on customers actually got tired on all the time. As part of the new versions of SharePoint, especially in on-premises, we released a new version every single 3 years, and then they needed to do an update project. And then they needed to invest another 400 to 500,000 for upgrading the intranet to the latest level. And that's something what we've seen gradually throughout the years of customers no longer being willing to do. So they want to have evergreen environments. They want to have something where they're with known costs, no surprises. They want to pay X amount of money for every single month for a end users to be able to access the intranet, and then they want to have the extensibility options on it. And that's why then the SharePoint, modern SharePoint Online, and all of that was introduced. And a lot of that is based on customer feedback, not just randomly Microsoft dictating on things to happen. But of course, some of that is, of course, coming from Microsoft as well. And it's not like everybody agrees on those decisions. So completely understandable feedback. On the customer voice, if you have a Microsoft representative, that would be the right way of doing that. Premier support and customer connections, if you have those customer direct Microsoft contacts, that would be the right way of doing that. Other than that, it's also the SharePoint user voice feedback portal. So if I go in here, that is something which is getting more and more attention internally as well. There's a feedback portal for Microsoft Teams, for development, for SharePoint, all of this stuff. And this is getting more and more attention internal as well. So I will paste in here the chat on that. Now, this is one of those locations. Well, does it matter if I go here and vote? And the answer is yes, it does matter. But there's a bit of a delay on getting things moving based on this feedback. And there's more than 200, I don't want to actually say exact numbers. There's hundreds of millions of people using SharePoint online. There's more than 270 million people using monthly Microsoft Teams. So you can imagine how much feedback Microsoft is getting every single day, and how much feedback and ideas and positive and negative feedback there's coming. So it's really hard to react on them individually. So that's why we have the feedback portals on collecting the collective mind and feedback from them. Benjamin says SPFX by itself is leaps and bounds past what you used to have for an older version of SharePoint. Yes, that is 100% agree on that. SPFX has been insanely successful, and it is really flexible. And sure, it would be nice if it would be always supporting the latest and greatest on Node and React and everything else. But there's a bit of a challenge on that one, which comes back on this UX in here. All of the SharePoint framework solutions and SharePoint framework components running in this UX or in SharePoint UX or inside of Teams have to align on what's on the other elements within a page. So as SharePoint internals evolve on using Node 18 and React 18 and so on, then we can actually update the SPFX available for developers as well. So bit of a clarification on that as well. Graph API, yes, the React are really, really good together. Absolutely.
In the AMA app, there's a question on time for reload for SPFX. Says it can take dozens of seconds from change in the code, VS Code, to see changes in page SPFX. There's one official package to speed it up with a hot reload. I think FastServe might be what is being referred to there.
Yep.
Any change?
Yep. So we've been looking into that in engineering. The FastServe from Sergei Sergeyev is absolutely brilliant. One of the challenges of that is that it actually, so the reason why it's faster, it actually takes away some of the things which are in the build pipeline. So it's kind of like, well, that's not important. No, that's not important. No, that's not important. So it makes educated guesses on behalf of you, which are there actually for a reason. So there has been objectives internally to speed up the build pipeline and make it better and adapt some of the speed Sergei's code. But we cannot directly just adapt the Sergei's code either, because there are intentional operations and tasks in this pipeline which are there for a reason. If it works for you, SPFX FastServe is awesome. It is really, really, really good. And he's done such a great job on optimizing things. Will we support that directly within the product group? Answer is no. but we're looking into optimizing the build pipeline for sure in the future. So that's a continuous effort. And I know for a fact that within the upcoming semester, meaning from January to June, there are priorities again on optimizing the developer experiences even more. So making it better from directly natively within the engineering side. Shao Mendes is asking, related on ACE, will we have a choice of future the full design card view cards like we do with Quick View? And let me explain this a bit. So let me go in here. And I'm going to explain the question. This relates on Viva Connection and Viva Home. Viva Home is something which is rolling out relatively soon. But this question is really on what kind of designs I can use in a card view. And the card view is basically this view and in the Viva dashboard. Notice we call it Viva dashboard nowadays, not necessarily Viva Connection dashboard. Which is in this one in here. We provide 3 different layout options currently. And the question is, can we have full flexibility within the card view? The reason why we currently do not provide you the optimized full flexibility in the card view is that the card view is designed and optimized for a mobile usage. So basically for a mobile usage in here. If the card view would have the same flexibility as adaptive cards all up, it would actually mean that the loading of the components would have a significantly more performance impact, so it would have to load more and more, so it would actually get slower because it would have to load the full adaptive card stack before it can actually render the UX. And that's really why at some point the design team decided that, well, we will have a certain set of cards. For now, at least, we're not looking into having a full flexibility for doing those cards in here. Now, what we are, however, looking to do is provide a significant set of additional card layouts. So this will start rolling out gradually within upcoming semester, meaning the first half of calendar year 2023. So you'll have more flexibility within these card views. So you can actually have, I don't actually want to promise, different sizes even, and then also different layout options to be available. And then you can flip the text and icon and images on them. The full flexibility on the layout is currently not in plans because there's a concern of that performance impact. And also the design team in Microsoft is really concerned about the card views to start looking, or the dashboard start looking too flexible, too crazy. And that's why they want to have more controls on that. So that's where the thinking is. Now, in the quick view, as Shao is mentioning as well, you have full flexibility with adaptive cards. We are actually looking into having more flexibility here as well with the latest 1.15, is it 1.15? Latest version of adaptive cards, and then even more flexibility potentially in the future. I don't want to go too much detail in there, but we want to make sure that there's more flexibility in here. In the card design and card view, as said, we want to have a bit more controls, but we're looking into having more flexibility. How about background colors and how about additional options in here? Answer is yes, all of that is in the pipeline. We're looking into making that happen. So don't quote me on this one, but if you go back in, let's say Windows Phone 7, if we go back in here, no, the images. Whenever we released the Windows Phone, if you remember, originally Windows Phone icons were looking really static, and they didn't have that much flexibility. Then, as part of the next versions, we actually started allowing much more flexibility within the Windows Phone layouts. So you could actually have background colors, you can have different images, different things. So you will see the similar kind of a transition gradually within the dashboard. So you'll have more flexibility coming in the dashboard. Not that the dashboard is same as the Windows Phone icons, but it has the similar kind of a design thinking as well. It's a mobile first experience. Good. Wow. It is already 9 a.m. in the morning. So in the Pacific, not in here. It's 7 p.m. But anyway, so do we have any super Pending questions. We need to probably close up.
There's one on Mega Menu and SPO team sites. I was asked a couple of times, but we might be able to follow that up in the chat if we want to close out the call.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess we need to. I guess we need to close up the call. Now, good to see that people are actually liking this kind of a super relaxed ad hoc way. We will have one more of these in 3rd of January. If these are super popular, we might end up doing. Every now and then there's a kind of ad hoc demo setups in the future as well. But what we want to do basically during the holiday season is not to cancel the calls. We want to provide you enough value to have a discussion and have a random ad hoc demos in these calls as well. So the 3rd of January is a similar call as today. And then 10th of January, we already have 2 demos queued up. And maybe as an extra thing, if there's extra time in the end of that call, if we don't have 3 demos, we can move into the ad hoc demo mode again. But thanks everybody for joining. Thank you for really active chats. There was a lot of good stuff happening in the chat. Thank you for the birthday wishes as well. I do not remember even what is my age at this moment, so I'm that old, it doesn't matter anymore. But anyway, thanks everybody for joining. Thanks David for the covering as well. We will get the recording out in 24 hours. If there was something what we went through and want to go back and listen to Finglish, that what did he say? You can actually see that and the recording in the YouTube channel within 24 hours. But thanks everybody for joining. Have a great rest of the week. We'll be definitely in touch, and thank you for the feedback. Thanks, David. Cheers, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody.